Hey, in this demonstration, I'm going to go over all of the steps for the glass project. You started by taking a good quality photo of a piece of glass. Then you grab a grid and you cut off all of the white excess borders, making sure you don't cut off the black line on the side until you get something like this. Then you line this grid up at the bottom left-hand corner. You draw all the way around the grid. You extend the lines out, down, over, and up. And then you take a ruler and you connect all of your lines. Making sure that you're not getting these crooked because it'll really throw you off. And you connect all the horizontal lines, and then you go and you connect all of the vertical lines. Then you place the ABCs on the top and the 1, 2, 3s down on the side. Then you take this grid one more time and you place it on top of your black drawing paper in the same location. So on your photocopy, we had it at the bottom left-hand corner, but there was a little bit of a gap, a little white gap. So we're going to place this at the bottom corner, left-hand corner, with a little bit of a gap. Trace around the border, extend the marks up carefully, over carefully, down carefully, over, and then you're going to connect the lines. Anything that you draw on here, you want to draw lightly because we don't want to put deep grooves into the paper. And so I'm going to press like a value 1 with every mark I make, including the border that you drew, including the lines that you extended out, making sure that my pencil is nice and sharp while I draw all of these lines, because I want to make sure that they erase completely and that they didn't put an indent in the paper. This is Molly Hawkins paper, and it's very thin, so just holding it tight is going to crease the paper. So you want to make sure that you don't hold it tight, don't do anything that will wrinkle it in any type of way. Then you sketch out what you had on your reference photo, and you look at negative spaces to see if you're accurate, and you can measure and plot, and it's going to be a one-to-one relationship. So you can measure these gaps and then go to your grid that you would have had completed and then place those measurements on that paper to be more accurate. After it's sketched out, you would sketch out all of the detail shapes, including the reflections, any major shapes that you see. Like I sketched this out before I shaded it in. You can see another reflection that I had sketched out right there. So not only are you drawing the contours, but you're drawing the major shapes of the reflections in there as well. You want to make sure that you're always using a separator paper so the oils on your hands are not getting on your paper, even when you're sketching it out initially. Try to get in that good habit. When we start adding value, we are going to use a General's white charcoal pencil and a smudge stick. And then I'm going to go over the different techniques right now on how you use this charcoal on the black paper. So you get your reference photo right next to you. And I like to point to the area that I'm working on so that I don't get confused. So I might just start on my reflections. I work square by square or area by area. I don't jump all over the place when I'm doing this kind of a grid drawing. And I'm going to start right here in this square, and I could get this whole shape done perfectly and then move to this square if I wanted to, or I can get the whole reflection done and then this open area. It's up to you. So I am going to apply this onto the paper. If it's lighter, I'm pressing harder. If it's darker, I'm pressing less. So that's a pretty light reflection, and then it gets a little darker there, so I'm putting only a little bit of the charcoal on the paper, and then here it's lighter again. So I'm pressing harder. You got to make sure that you are not pressing so hard that you're killing the tooth of the paper. So if I press hard, whatever fibers I had on the paper are going to get smushed down, and it's not going to accept this anymore, and it's not going to get as bright as it is now. This will not turn completely white. You're going to have like little speckles in between. And so some kids will be like, I'm going to press harder to get rid of those speckles. You're just going to mess it up, and then it's not even going to get as bright as it is now. So once you press those fibers down, it's kind of over for you in that spot. So just, you can press kind of hard, but not so hard that you're really getting rid of that tooth. And that goes for the same, that's the same thing with the smudge stick. You don't want to press super hard and ruin the fibers of the paper either, okay? So nothing hard. No hard pressure with the pencil, no hard pressure with the smudge stick, no hard pressure with your charcoal pencil. So I'm just going to really carefully look at the detail, and yours is going to come out better the more you pay attention. So this is all about how well you're paying attention to this. This is a pretty dark area, so I'm barely applying anything to the surface of the paper. And then I can smudge as I go, so maybe I want to get this area completely finished. I do not have the smudge stick up at a high angle. I have it at the angle that it is shaped at, so I have that laying down. And then if I applied the pencil back and forth, and I smudge back and forth, I'm just elongating those lines out. So let me show you what I mean by that. If I was shading, and I'm going to do kind of a bad job, if I was shading like this and then I smudge in the same exact direction, that is not going to get smooth, right? Because I'm just taking it and I'm just elongating those lines out even farther. If I do those lines again and I smudge in the opposite direction, it does get smoother, right? Because now I'm pulling it across those empty patches, right? The best way to shade is to try to shade smoothly to begin with, so you can do the circles when you are able to, and when you smudge, you can do the circles when you're able to as well, and see how much smoother that gets, like perfectly smooth. So try not to just apply it quickly. Don't apply it harshly, like I'm just gonna whatever. Try to get the value that you want it to be and as smooth as you can. Obviously, it's more grainy, so you're not going to be able to get it to be too smooth until you get it smudged. But circles, as much as you can, would be the key. Not all the time can you do circles, so like on edges, I can't do circles because then I won't get a nice edge. So when I go to smudge this in along the edge, I'm going to do line back and forth. And then when I get over here, I'm going to do circles. Do you notice how that got way too light though? So if that happens to you, you can just take the eraser and you can shade with the eraser. So I can kind of take a little bit of that off. Sometimes you can use the eraser to get textures if you had any. So like up here, I kind of dotted this to get kind of like a little dipply texture up at the top, because that's what I saw in my reference photo. And then I can go back and I can smudge again. Now, I can also use the remnants of whatever the white charcoal is stuck on my smudge stick, and I can use that to shade with as well. So instead of applying any extra charcoal, I'm just using whatever's on the smudge stick. And this is kind of nice to do because when I want to keep that area dark, if I only have a little bit of charcoal on this, I can kind of pull it out and then it stays really, really dark. And so I can kind of like do a little bit like right here because I don't want that to get too light. Doing the circles when I can. Where it gets too dark again, I don't have to really worry. I can just erase out. I am going to very carefully go across this edge so I keep my nice edge. And then when I'm smudging this, if it gets darker, like did you see that? How it kind of got rid of my light value a little bit? I can always just apply more on the top and not smudge that layer so that it stays kind of light. So I can go and I can apply that back on top. I miss a little spot, so I'm going to go back in. Now let's say that you're smudging and you have too much powder stuck inside of your smudge stick. All you do is kind of take off the white powder onto another sheet of paper, and then when I'm smudging, I have a lot less than I would have normally, okay? The more and more you see these little tiny dots and reflections and shapes, the more amazing this project is going to look when you're finished with it. So I see a shape. I'm also, when I'm drawing this shape, I'm also looking at where it is inside of that square, and it's kind of in the middle, to let that grid still help me get it into the right place. And then just work shape by shape, value by value, looking at all of the subtle value changes. If you have an area that is all one value and nothing else is going on, it's going to look flat and it's going to look like it's missing something. So a lot of times you don't want it to be all one value for too long. You want to see like, okay, this is one value and that's a little bit of a darker value. And you want to really train your eye to look at all those subtle value changes. When you are all done, you can go back in, and my eraser right now has, so let's say I was to erase this. My eraser now has white charcoal on it. And then if I go to erase, well, it didn't work that time, but sometimes when I go to erase, it transfers that white. So before I erase anything on here, I want to erase my eraser to get off any remnants that we don't want to transfer. And then I'm going to go back and I'm going to clean up my edges and erase that background grid. And then the last thing I do when I'm done with this is I'm going to add some subtle value for the background. So my table is a little bit lighter. This can all stay dark. So look at that. I have a shadow right here. I'm going to add a little tiny bit of that value in on that surface of the table. You might have your value coming in and hitting the back up here, and then maybe the table is dark. Whatever you see in that photo, just kind of repeat that on your drawing. And that is it.